This is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org, and today we have the distinct honor and pleasure to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only G. Edward Griffin, a very important scholar, the man who wrote Creature from Jekyll Island. And in this video, we're going to be talking about a lot of important information that you need to know regarding cancer, the cancer on society, Red Pill University, solutions, and so much more. But first of all, before we start, Mr. Griffin, you've done so much incredible work for so many decades now. I'm wondering, from your kind of perspective, are we freer than we were before? Are we more divided than we were before? What is your kind of analysis and understanding of the current situation of humanity from where it was before?
Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty easy question to answer because if you have any kind of historical perspective and you can mentally rewind your consciousness back to, say, even 10 years ago, but certainly if you go back 20 or 30 years ago, you can see that our freedom to act, to say things, our freedom to earn a living in the way we want to, our freedom to travel, all of our freedoms are greatly reduced to what they were, and it's a continuum. It just continues that way, and it's accelerating at the present time. So this is a growth of, we're living in an era of the growth of government control and regulation, all supposedly for our own good, you understand. They keep telling us that because we have terrorism out there and we have drugs out there and we've got pornography out there and all these bad things. So we have to be content with giving up our liberties in order to gain our security. I mean, that's the party line. And unfortunately, many people are buying into that because they think it's real.
Now, I think a lot of it also has to do with kind of psychology and propaganda and misinformation with either corporations or government or the powers that be using our own kind of weaknesses, using our own kind of emotions against us. What do you think is the biggest purveyor of this kind of bigger divide and conquer agenda, this kind of bigger eliminating of our freedom?
Well, I'm glad you said the purveyor because that too is easy to see. It's our media. It's our, I guess we call it the mainstream media. I don't think it's mainstream anymore. It's dominant, that's for sure, but it doesn't represent the mainstream of America. Its purpose, I think, has become to engineer the mainstream, to change the thinking of the mainstream people. And it's doing a good job, by the way. And here again, it's easy to see that happen. I remember not too long ago where the mainstream media, as we call it now, was pretty well being able to hide behind the facade that it was neutral. It went to great strides to preserve the appearance, at least, of being neutral. And it was very effective when they were doing that because people said, well, here, they've looked at both sides and they're honest people, and so we'll be influenced by their opinions and their direction. But now it's all out in the open. I mean, they're obviously participants in the debate. They're activists themselves. They are the contestant. They are one of the contestants. And yet some people still have forgotten that to look at that. They still think that the media is neutral. So anyway, to answer your question, it's clearly the media, and that leads to the other issue, which is the rise of the alternative media. And again, I hate to even use that word alternative, although that's the one we use. It's the rise of the new media, I would call it. And you yourself are a major part of that, you see. And it's one of the great advantages of the technology we have with the internet and all these smartphones and wireless this and wireless that. And we can, as little individuals, have our voice get up there into the airwaves and it's very democratic because people can choose. Well, the powers that be don't like that very much, and of course they're trying to clamp down on the internet, clamp down on broadcasting, clamp down on everything in the name of protecting us from terrorism and pornography and crime and all of that, because that's the trick that people fall for. But they're just working as hard as they can to put more and more controls on even the new media. This is a very dangerous thing happening because they could succeed, and it depends on how vigorous we are in pushing back.
I couldn't agree with you more because information and knowledge and power are the most important thing. Truth could bring down corporations and empire, and it's critically key for these people to control the narrative. And we saw the internet when it first came out. it red-pilled and woke so many people up to the real issues that really was concerning everyone, and now we're kind of seeing it being more restricted. And I kind of do see kind of weaponized information pushing people either to the extreme left or the extreme right, also with supposed independent media now today. So I just wanted to get kind of your take on this Antifa versus alt-right, fighting over statues, fighting over these kind of celebrities, fighting over things that really have no effect on our lives. What is your take on this kind of bigger divide and conquer happening right now?
I think that's a very important issue that you've touched there. It should be obvious to anybody that stands back a little bit and looks at the scenario out there that the high visibility of the so-called alt-right and the so-called alt-left, what is the basis of that? It's high visibility. Every time you turn on your television set or even go on the internet, there are all these feeds up there. You see the Antifa against the white nationalists and all this stuff, and the statues coming down. It's theater. It's good theater. And now, why is it good theater? Some people would say, well, it's because it sells, and so the media does that simply because that's how the stupid public wants to be entertained, or they want to be scared. It's like looking at a horror movie. Kids like ghost stories because it scares them, And there's some, I'm sure there's some truth to that. I used to tell ghost stories to my kids. They loved it, Oh, that was scary. Well, I think that the public is in a little bit in a category like that. But I don't think that's the main thing that's going on. When you look at these groups on the so-called right and left, who's financing them? Are these just rank and file people that have regular jobs and they are all on fire because of their ideology and their affinity to some issue? No. All of them, well, the leaders that you see on television being interviewed, they're all working for some school. They're always on the payroll of some university. So they're or some grade school even now in high schools. They're all on the public payroll, but they're just the organizers. And you look at all of these people and they're professionals. They're professionals. And we see some of these same Antifa people showing up in one city and the next city, and they're bussed around. Well, where is this all coming from? Where's the money coming from for this? Well, even that is not hard to find. We all know this. Our good friend George Soros is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into these kinds of organizations. And then most of that money goes to the so-called left, but there's another source of money that's going more obscure, going to the so-called right, and that's coming from the deep state. I'm going to guess it's probably coming from the CIA or something that we don't even know what its name is. And, okay, now this is my opinion, based on I've done a lot of study of the strategies of these things over the years, so it's my opinion only, that I think that both sides are being financed by the group that wants to convert our nation into a totalitarian system. And they're financing both sides for the sole purpose of creating as much chaos and hatred and animosity and violence as they can. They can't do it all across the country, so they pick their spots and they make sure the media is there, and then they bust their people in, and then they put on a little war, and it's theater, but it looks very real when you're looking at the television set and you see, oh my gosh, this happened in Cincinnati. Now look what's happening in Detroit. Oh, in Florida now, and so forth. And so the average viewer says, oh, the whole country is burning apart. It's coming apart, burning up. When in reality, it's theater. And why are they doing that? I think they're doing it because they want the semblance of civil war. And actually, they're trying to bring about real civil war. They're trying to trick innocent people into it. They get fed up watching this stuff, and they look at one side or the other, depending what their viewpoint is, and this theater is creating genuine animosity and hatred. It's creating hatred. So that I think what they want is the rednecks to come out and all the extreme lefties to come out and start killing each other. So the real goal that they're after is say, you see how much violence there is out there? We must declare martial law. And so many Americans will say, oh, thank goodness you've finally solved the problem. And they don't realize that martial law has been the goal all along. And that's the reason they're doing it. That's my analysis of it.
Yeah, it's a perfect Hegelian dialect of problem, reaction, solution, which we've been talking about a very long time on this YouTube channel. And more people are saying, well, we need a bigger police state. And we've seen Donald Trump with his legislative actions meet those kind of concerns and needs from the people. And in reality, we're all losing, fighting over statues. Meanwhile, the middle class is being eviscerated. We're being bankrupted with all these foreign wars. There's no anti-war movement. Our food and water supply is being poisoned. Cancer is going up. Male infertility is going up. And there's a corporate government war against humanity. And people are like, oh, whoa, but there's a statue over there. So it's like, I just want to tell people to wake up. And kind of moving on to the next subject, you also did, kind of work in understanding cancer and understanding some of the solutions towards that. Would you mind just sharing your kind of research and the information that you talked about that? Because I think this is an important aspect for people to understand since it affects all of us, but not many people know exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that too is a really important topic, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it because I don't get too many opportunities to. People don't ask me about that. They're more interested in what's happening in the street. But when you think about it, there's more death and destruction and suffering going on in hospital wards and in the bedrooms of dying people around the world, certainly in the United States, from cancer. So you're talking about a great challenge to humanity. There it is. So I got into this some years ago quite by accident. I had no background in medicine, had no interest particularly. I thought, well, I'm young, I'll get along, and when I get sick, I'll go to the doctor, he'll fix me up. That was kind of my ready-made attitude, and looking back on it, I realized how that was kind of fed to me too. I was trained to believe that. Well, now I realize that I think we all have a responsibility for our health, and we can't just slough it off to others, because if you do that, you're running a risk of becoming victimized, because there are powerful commercial interests in the health industry. And the cancer component of that is probably the most powerful of all. There's more money spent on fighting cancer than just about anything I can think of, unless it's fighting wars. And so anyway, there's a lot of money there. Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, if they ever found a cure for cancer, what would happen to all of that employment? It would be gone. And I have had people in the medical profession tell me quite frankly that they want to find a control for cancer. A control, but not a cure. A control, especially if it's a patented medicine, means that you have an income for life, because you can sell your pills or your shots to somebody all their life. They have to have it. They have to have it. They don't care what it costs. They have to have it. And this is the ideal. This is the business model that I discovered exists in the cancer industry. It's a horrible business model. So having said that, now we deal with what is cancer, and is there a control for it that doesn't cost a lot of money? Is there a cure for it? And I know we don't have a lot of time to go deeply into this, but my conclusions after I guess it took me 8 years or so to really get into it, with a lot of help from doctors and researchers who knew a lot more about it than I. The conclusion was that cancer is not caused by something. It's caused by the lack of something. Something in our diet, actually. Now, it's aggravated by electromagnetic radiation. Incidentally, that's what they use to treat cancer. That makes a lot of sense. But we all know electromagnetic radiation, radiology, and that kind of stuff causes cancer, and that's what they're using to treat cancer. And it's done with, cancer is caused, or triggered, I should say, by toxic elements in our environment, maybe a lot of toxic preservatives in our foods and so forth. But the actual cancer itself, I learned from these professionals, these doctors, is nothing more or less than the healing process of the body fighting against these things. The body heals itself against damage, and it's constantly replacing damaged cells. If it didn't do that, we couldn't live. So it's a natural process, and what happens is primarily because of an insufficient dietary substance, and I'll talk about that in a moment, the ability to heal gets all tweaked. The cells start to reproduce and replace the old dead ones, or the sick ones, but then it comes to the point where they're already healed. Now what do you do? Well, something happens to the chemical or the electrical signals that say, okay, it's healed, stop. And it just continues to create new cells. It overheals and continues to heal. And that's what we call cancer. That's sort of an oversimplified view of it. But so you come to the startling conclusion that cancer is a normal process that's gotten out of whack. Well, you don't treat that by surgery or radiation or chemotherapy. You treat the lack of what was that thing lacking, causing those cells to get out of order. So that's the basic theory that I was introduced to by a lot of doctors and researchers, and it made sense to me. So I really dug into it and did my own independent research and confirmed it to my satisfaction. That's what cancer really is. Now, what is this food factor? It's called amygdalin. That's its native form. It's everywhere, by the way. It's ubiquitous. It's found in some 1,400 edible plants. So why do we have cancer if all we have to do is eat the stuff? Well, it's because we don't eat those plants. Why? Because they're bitter. That's one of the trademarks of amygdalin. It has a bitter taste. And if you ever ate an apple seed and chewed up the apple seed, you know what I'm talking about. That is the substance. That's what it tastes like. And it's found in seeds a lot. Apricot seeds, peach seeds, plum seeds, even cherry seeds. It's found in grasses. It's found everywhere. It's found a little bit in some of our foods, but we select against those foods. We hybridize against those. Lima beans used to have a pretty good dose of amygdalin. Well, lima beans still don't taste very good to me. They're kind of blech, but they were worse 80 or 90 years ago, and so they hybridized them, so they got rid of the amygdalin, so now they're not so bad. And everywhere you look, you see this process of selection against amygdalin in our natural foods, and that happens mostly in advanced societies where we can afford to do that. And primitive societies that can't afford to do that eat the natural foods, and wouldn't you know, primitive societies have a lot less cancer, and in some cases, no cancer. Meanwhile, we in the civilized world, in the advanced nations of the world, our cancer rates are going through the ceiling. And that's a clue.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that information with me. I remember my mom once had apricot seeds. She was like, take this, the government doesn't want you to have this. And I'm like, Mom, what do you mean? I'm like, and my mom wasn't really awake to all this stuff, but I started giving her information, and then she even surprised me. But I know the problem, the solution is so much bigger than we could even talk about. We could talk about this for hours. You wrote a whole book on this topic, but I kind of wanted to introduce it because I'm always interested in, okay, this is what's happening. Let's not play into the divide and conquer. This is a real issue that you should know about. Do more research about which will actually help you. And you've been doing really incredible work helping out humanity, and now you have a new project called Red Pill University. Yes. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. There's another huge topic, but I'll try and make this short. Many of us have been aware of these and similar problems for a long time. And as you said earlier, some people just don't want to hear about it because it's too controversial, it's too mind-bending, it's too depressing, or whatever the reason is. It's just too heavy. And it's always been a challenge to me is how do we break past that resistance? How do we get more and more people to the point where they'll at least look at what we're talking about and not just close the door automatically? And I think we found it. A year ago, we decided to put on something called the Red Pill Expo. Okay, I think most of your viewers know about the red pill versus the blue pill and the movie called The Matrix and all of that. But the idea is that if you take the red pill, you can see life the way it really is. You break out of the illusion, you break out of the matrix. But if you don't like it, if it's too harsh and you'd rather just be comfortable and not be aware of the truth, then you take the blue pill and you go back to sleep and you continue to be exploited by your hidden masters. Well, I thought it was a pretty good allegory for what's really happening in the world. So we built the Red Pill Expo around that theme, and the idea was that there are a lot of illusions out there. It's not just politics, but about health. We were talking about health now, and a lot of things. So we thought we would open this up and use that theme as kind of a popular, fun way of getting slowly into some very heavy and serious material. And it worked. All of a sudden, people said, yeah, I want to go to the Red Pill Expo. That sounds more fun than going to a constitutional revival, you know. And so I was kind of surprised. Everybody was surprised, but not as much as I was surprised that it really worked well, and I'm delighted. So we decided, we had a great conference, by the way, in Bozeman, Montana, of all places. And 600 people came from all over the country. They came from all over the U.S. They came from 12 different countries. And it was so successful, we decided we're going to do it, of course, every year. But when I walked out of there, Luke, I thought, we can't just let this drop. We can't wait another year. We have to keep this momentum going. So we decided to create the Red Pill University, which is sort of a continuation of the expo, but it's going on 365 days a year. An app will, of course, keep the whole thing together. That's the communication channel. But more than that, by far more important than just an app and a conference and emails and stuff like that, is the fact that we're in the process right now of installing little campuses, physical campuses in every county in the United States. We'll have boots on the ground, so to speak. And this is really exciting because this is what the extremists, I won't even use the word left because it's not left, but the people that really want to change America for the worse and put us under totalitarian rule, they have used this technique of little groups in local communities all around the country. And we just stood by and said, oh my God, they're here and they're there, and we have done nothing about it. So now we're in the process of a counterattack. We're building groups in every county right now in the United States. That's the promise, and I think the goal, the future reality of the Red Pill University.
That sounds like a beautiful project. I'm going to be lending my support and trying to help you guys as much as I can with that project, because really information is key. If we had really good media and mainstream media, we wouldn't be having these kind of mock civil wars that we're seeing in the streets. We wouldn't have out of control corporate industries that take advantages of your illnesses. So I just want to say thank you so much for all the incredible work you've been doing. I always have a distinct honor and pleasure to be able to listen to you, to talk to you. I hope everyone else did as well. And if you did, share this video. The link to G. Edward Griffin's website will be in the description below. And of course, I want to thank everyone so much from the bottom of my heart for watching and supporting real independent media. Love you guys.